Welcome to the Sales versus Marketing podcast, where we speak with sales, marketing, and business leaders. I'm your host, Scott, and today we are sitting down with Kyle James from Zentap. Now, Zentap is an early stage, high growth startup. They were founded December 2017, so almost 2 years old, under David Dool, who's a Forbes 30 under 30. Kyle was the first sales rep. He has built the sales organizations to over 30 individuals. And the organization to 49 individuals total in 2 offices, all in the Los Angeles area. Kyle is responsible for, over the past 2 years, growing the sales organization, securing millions in revenue, and achieving incredible success. So I'm very excited because he's built this organization from the ground up, obviously with the other co-founders, but Kyle is primarily responsible for the sales and revenue operations at Zentap. So I'm going to let Kyle introduce himself. So Kyle, take it away. Give us a little bit of information about your background, where you've come from, and what Zentap is doing today.
Sure. Yeah. So, as far as my sales and marketing background, I've got about 5 years in sales, about 3 years or so in marketing. Currently, I'm VP of sales at Zentap, and we are a real estate marketing company. So we help real estate agents basically save time by converting their listing data and their personal branding into a variety of marketing assets that automatically post on Facebook, website, and soon to be LinkedIn here in a week or two. So that's a good little short rundown on me.
That's good. So you started, you're one of the co-founders at Zentap, correct?
Yeah, I was one of the first members. We actually started out of David Dool is our CEO and founder, really smart guy. He's a real estate investor, and obviously started this company. And when we were figuring out if this was going to be a viable business, we started out of his back house. It was me, my wife, another partner named Ben, and his wife, who actually works here as well too. Both of my wife and his wife I'm sorry, not his wife. It's actually his girlfriend. But
whatever. You're not gonna get in trouble for that mistake. That's
I know, right? Yeah, I'm sure she'll be happy. I'm sure he'll be happy as well on that. But they've been together for a while, and we're all close. But we started out of the back house, and we just started the sales process there, and things went well. We got a few deals in our first couple of days, and we were like, okay, it was impressive enough to David to where he invested in an office. We got a small office in West LA off Olympic and Bundy. Started out of there. It's about 2,500, 3,000 square feet. We filled it up, did well in sales, got it to a few $100,000 a month, and then needed more space. So we moved a little bit more eastbound on Wilshire, off Wilshire and Cloverdale, and got a office here. And it's about 6,500 square feet, and we're running out of space now, and just kind of looking to keep expanding and keep things growing in the right direction for 2020.
Very cool, man. That's an awesome story. So you built it from the ground up. Like you were like 0 day, like right from the start. So tell me, how did you know this was a need that how did you find this target market fit for? And let me just understand, is it a software, or is it just are you like a digital agency?
Good question. So I'll answer the latter question first. It's a software. So the software basically connects their MLS, which is the multiple listing service, where 98% of the houses that are for sale on the market are listed within the regional MLSs. And MLS is owned by, brokers that band together, and, agents and brokers pay in fees in order to have this collective access to the data. So we connect an agent's MLS into our dashboard. And so all of the data that's pertaining to a specific property, being the images, the square footage, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, the price point, all that gets automated into these different marketing assets. So with one listing, we can convert it into a listing video, a congratulatory video for the seller after it's sold, or for the buyer who purchased it, right? We can, convert it into a single property website. We can make content that's specific to that property for Instagram. And so the software does the heavy lifting in that respect. And then we incorporate the agent or broker's personal branding. So their headshot, their logo, their contact information into that asset to make it branded to the agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. That's a very cool software. And I think that I have actually a couple. I'm going to write down a whole bunch of notes. So if you see me not looking at you and not paying attention, I'm just trying to take down notes so I don't forget stuff later.
Hey, no worries, man.
First, I want to dive into, how did you like who coded this? Who built this out? Like, how did you know this was gonna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Major shout out to Or Jacoby. He's our CTO. You can find him on LinkedIn, Or Jacoby, ORR space YAKOBI without looking. I'm sure that's right though. But yeah, he's our CTO. He's a super smart guy. Built the software up from scratch. I mean, in the early days when we had our first few clients, we were doing stuff manually by hand. It wasn't the software was not close to as robust as it is today. And I mean, we're still a young company, like we'll turn 2 in December. So the software is still at that point where it's getting better and better on a daily basis. And so I'm excited for what the future holds, but I'm very confident in the value that we can provide to agents and brokers, as it stands right now as well, too.
Yeah, no, 100%. I can totally see the value because I think that one thing that you're doing right is you're tapping into an industry that obviously has a lot of professionals that want to market themselves, brand themselves, and you're giving them like an easy, scalable way to do it. And I don't think that you see a lot of industry-specific solutions like what you're providing. Like you'll see, again, I asked you are you a digital agency or whatever. You'll see real estate agents go to these companies and look for people to produce all these assets. But it's not something like I'm assuming this is almost going to turn into like a self-serve model eventually if it's a software product.
Yeah. So, what's interesting about it is that it will eventually become intuitive and effortless enough to where it will be extremely applicable as a self-serve model. Currently, what we found is that a good chunk of agents do use the software on a frequent basis, but a lot of it is so automated that some of them just want to delegate it purely to our in-house team and our client success division, who will do some of those tasks that are related to this for the client. And we offer premier support for as little as like $199 a month with the software included as well too.
That's cheap. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's hands off for the agents. And when we're looking at, and this isn't to say that this is a case with all agents, but the average agent according to realtor.com is 54 years old, right? So not everybody has the opportunity or the time or even the desire to really use even a software. A lot of agents that we work with just want the end result without really having to be too involved. And so we're working more and more to try to minimize the role that agents have to fulfill in that, but also simultaneously make the product easy enough and defined enough and intuitive enough to, service those agents for specific jobs that they need done and accomplished as well too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. How did you, who's the person who understood that, first of all, real estate agents needed a content marketing provider? And then who's the person who knew which assets would be most valuable for them?
Both. To answer to both is David Duell. He's a really, really sharp guy. Was Forbes 30 under 30 back in 2014. He's also a huge real estate investor in the area. So he has a lot of agents and brokers that are friends and family. And he basically would ask me like, come on, like, why aren't you doing more on social media? And they're like, it's not that I don't want to, it's just I don't have the time and I don't really understand that. Like I'm busy selling properties and all that. And so if it's between selling a property or, picking up a phone call and posting on social media, I'm going to choose the prior.
Yeah.
And he saw that there was an opportunity there. And then, that's where I came in, was trying to help with more of the sales specific stuff. And Ben is kind of more operations and also like chief revenue officer as well too. So he really helps out with a lot of the organizational aspect of it. But as far as the ideation and kind of seeing the opportunity within the marketplace, David has kind of an eye for that. And he's the most skilled and I would say advanced as far as understanding like product market fit.
Yeah. Because you found like you're only 2 years old, but you've already scaled to hundreds of thousands in revenue. And so you found product market fit pretty quick.
Yeah, we did. I mean, within the first year, we didn't do any marketing at all. It was ironic. It was all 100% cold call. And we got to about 5 million in revenue in year one. So
that's really good. That's significant.
It was a solid, we had some help, a gentleman named Peter that actually worked at was previously a competitor that I think is shut down. He kind of, consulted with us and kind of showed us the ropes as far as like helping agents be able to understand, or helping us to be able to understand agents is what I should say.
Yeah.
And kind of what their pain points are, what appeals to them. And then, we just kind of started learning more as we went, and we kept it a month-to-month solution that made it easier for people to commit, and then incentivized them to do an annual. And it worked really well. And now we're starting to get more into that free trial model and starting to sophisticate more of our online funnel is kind of our next goal.
So you have like, you're going to like go into some sort of like freemium model where you have like in-app upsells or that kind of.
Yeah, so that's definitely where we're headed as well. And we're doing like a free trial model right now where we let people test it out on a free trial and just like create their first piece of content and give them a strategy. And, most agents don't really want to mobilize that strategy. So if they want, they can hire us to do it, for as little as $99 up to $199 per month. And we'll manage it and do everything for them. And there's no long-term commitment, which I think is kind of the fear for most agents, is getting trapped into something that they don't, think is beneficial. And we definitely don't want to be a part of that. So it's something that, we're happy to handle for them if they prefer that over the free trial, and most do. It's usually just about making sure that we understand what really their goals are and what they're really ultimately trying to accomplish, make sure that we give them realistic expectations of what it's going to take to accomplish those things, and then, see it through. And we're not, by all means, definitely not perfect yet, but we work hard and we care about the clients, and we always try to do right by them as well.
Well, that's, I think that's half the battle too. And if you have that mindset going into it, you're going to be successful. Maybe not as quick as you guys were, but you'll still be successful eventually.
Yeah.
So you said you had some sales background, but you were basically charged with taking a software product to market. Did you have experience with this before? Like, what's your professional background? How did it sort of parlay, or was it just like you learned on the job and you just?
It was more the latter. I worked in student loan consolidations before, which is basically just introducing students into programs that, help them lower their student loan debt. They were publicly available through the government, but we just charged a fee to kind of help them with their processing and let them know that in the process. Was my sales experience, and I led a team there and always had, the best team, I guess I could say, out of the bunch. And this was my first software experience, like a SaaS experience at all. And as far as taking the product to market and like being able to create a successful sales team, I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of help with, great people that I work with, such Peter Alexander, A.L. Cohen.
Dude, you're a very humble leader. Like, it's like, it's refreshing because I think that's why you are so successful, because it seems like everybody in the organization is really aware of everyone else's contribution.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a team effort the whole way. And, it's been something that I think, it didn't happen overnight. We still have our bumps and bruises, but the other parts of it is that while learning on the fly, I think one thing that I've always kind of my hidden skill or talent is just work ethic, I would say. So I'm not the most smart, not the most intelligent, person that's probably been in sales or in marketing, but I'll work hard for it. So I studied everything that I didn't know, knew the phone sales aspect of it really well, willing to get kind of down and dirty when necessary to kind of lead by example.
Yeah.
And now my next learning curve is kind of learning that process of duplication and replication and being able to help, convert salespeople into leaders, which is, something I'm definitely all the way there at yet, but we'll get there, and it'll just be kind of a learning process on the way. So.
Yeah. So and that's interesting that you mentioned that, because cold calling and building a business that way is not always the way that people will build out a SaaS product, right, from the ground up. So a lot of, you see a lot of developer focused SaaS products, to build and optimize an inbound funnel, and they'll try and get people to sign up, kind of like what you're doing now. So that scalable, predictable revenue piece that everybody wants to go for. So you still killed it doing the cold calling outbound method. So, and it was just yourself, your number one first sales employee, and you were doing this all on your own. So tell me, how do you approach, you have no idea, you just know that realtors buy it. What's your strategy is it even are you purchasing lists? Are you going on LinkedIn?
Good question. So, no, we basically had a bot that could scrape publicly available websites and gather contact information and also name and all that basic information for agents. And we would just call them, just cold call them. And they're obviously, agents and brokers are marketing using their cell phone, right?
Yeah.
So so we could reach directly to them and basically just try to call some value to them by just, speaking to the obvious, hey, I'm looking at your Facebook business page. I see that, the last time you posted was 3 weeks ago. You're posting links to articles that are redirecting people away from the Facebook business page and instead of helping them engage with your page.
Yeah.
Right? So what we would do for you is create a banner video, also videos to promote your listings, educate buyers and sellers about the trends that are going on in the market. And depending on what time period we're talking about, now we would offer them a free trial. Previously, we would offer them something that was an easy in month-to-month solution with no cancellation fees, ranging anywhere from like, $99 to $199.
So let's talk about your sales team now. So you're almost 2 years in. So how large is your sales organization?
So right now, the sales organization is about 20 in this office, and we have about 10 down the road in another office. So about 30 altogether. Okay,
and then you had a hand in hiring all those people and building out like the sales playbook for your organization.
Yeah, so I definitely had a strong piece in that. Didn't hire everybody. There's another team that is down the way that Peter runs, who he was one of the people that came on board early and really helped us to get where we are now. So he hires and kind of does his own thing in his environment and does a really good job at it. And then everybody in the office here, for the most part, I've played a role in hiring and kind of helping to groom, as well as AL as well too.
So when you're hiring into, you're like the first sales hire, you're building out your team. Who do you look for? Do you look for junior, ambitious, or are you looking for veteran? Like what type of person?
Junior, ambitious, I would say more. I mean, the first real, my wife was probably like the first real hands-on like sales hire, just because she's always killed in whatever we do. Yeah. She is like has the exact same, if not a stronger work ethic than me, and is always just like doubled anybody she's ever worked with in production. Yeah. So she was number one. And very similar to me in the fact that she is relatively new to as far as like SaaS sales, right? And picked up on it very quickly. That was number one. And then now we're always looking for people in general. It's great if they have experience, but we would rather take somebody that has a lot of mental fortitude, eagerness and willingness to learn. And that is, a good fit for a startup, right? Sometimes when people come from more mature organizations, they expect things to be in a certain way and they kind of are used to that. Everything is defined for you in your role. It's not one in which you're kind of helping to co-create, right? At least from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. So like we try to tell people when they come in, like, look, this is a progressive sales culture, in the sense of that there will be change, right? We're a startup. We're 2 years in. We're doing well. We're headed in the right direction. But everything is subject to change, right? We want to keep consistency, but your role could redefine. You may be asked to step into a bigger and better role if that's a good fit for you. We may slightly modify the pitch or the offer, and we're looking for people that are able to adapt without getting too mentally,
stressed. Yeah,
exactly. And that are also able to take a lot of rejection. It's, that's, I think, the same in every sale, but a lot of times people are used to, I call them like inbound rejection problems. It's like you got like 150 inbound leads and getting some rejection. It's different when you're kind of charged with, moving that force yourself and doing a lot of heavy outbound and really taking people from, I don't know you or your company to, sure, I'll give you guys a shot. So, so I would say, we're looking for like kind of that scrappy individual that's willing to do that. Or, if they did come from like a big organization and are doing really well, before, and they have a lot of experience and can help us grow this by adding that experience and adding their insight and thought to it. That's great. But, obviously that person would also too have to be kind of willing to help us, navigate the waters and the current as well too, and be flexible with it.
Yeah, because you're still under 50 employees total, correct?
I believe we actually are, right? Like 49.
Okay. So, there's like you start to see as your organization starts to get over, I think like I've read this before and I've seen it in some past roles that I've had where that 50 person is where you hit a wall and then it's very hard to, so you have to make sure, and I don't want to hijack, but in my opinion, you have to make sure that you have to really map out like the processes as opposed to where getting to that 50 person point, you can do it if you just have enough energy. Whereas past that, you know what I mean?
No, I totally know. And it's ironic that you mentioned that because I think we're right, like literally at like 49.
Yeah.
And just recently, I thought that and I still think this, that we've gotten to a close enough place where it was worth kind of creating an RPB framework and finding all the resources, processes, and values that comprise our sales organization. And so it's there, but it's still being molded. And one of the cool things that I think about my job in its current state is that I have a lot of great people on the team, and it's like every single day, our AEs, even new hires that are still SDRs, our account managers, are helping me to frame that RPV framework. They're coming up with new ways on a daily basis that we can make this an even stronger sales culture, make our processes stronger, and kind of defining this journey as we go along. Of course, I put in my insight in that and put a lot of thought and and effort into kind of molding that as well too. But I always try to remain open to the ideas of everybody that we work with as well too, because a lot of times they're the ones in the trenches that are out there making the calls and stuff like that. So they got some really valuable insight that I like to try to adapt and put into play.
I think that's smart. I think just to make or keep yourself sane, I think it's important to incorporate their ideas, because you're at the point where you can leverage that agility, right? Because you have the ability to tap into, like you said, the front line, and you're only so many, you're not so many steps away. So while you can get that feedback, to be honest, any organization should be trying to take that feedback, that real time, that user feedback and the field feedback, and then incorporating it into their strategy, their playbook, their marketing messaging, whatever. But I think that the fact that you are aware of that and you're doing it, you're going to continue. Hopefully, you'll continue to see success, because that's I think if you build out, for example, the conversations that your sales reps have with your customers into your branding and your messaging and your marketing collateral, and you build that out into like a playbook that comprises like most common objections and stuff like that, that just helps everybody succeed, right? So it's good that you have that culture of shared knowledge.
Yeah, no, it's definitely what we're trying to create. I read one book that was really influential, I guess, in my young leadership career here, is Ray Dalio's Principles. And I really like the idea of an idea meritocracy with like believability based or weighted decision making, right? And there's a lot of smart people that we have here. And so I'm trying my best to kind of incorporate that type of methodology in there, so that the best ideas do truly win. And like you said, to keep myself sane, because I think I like anybody, I could get in trouble if I start thinking that I'm the only one with some good ideas in here. So
and then it's also all, if you try and take care of everything, you run out of hours in a day too. So where you can leverage everyone else's resources and insights, I think it makes your job easier.
Good point.
How did you build out from the ground up? How did you build out your sales team? Was it like an inside outside ISR AE? What was it?
Yeah, so it's inside sales, and basically it depends on what time period. So I'll just stick to right now as to what we're doing now. Now we're bringing on people, starting them as an SDR for a month, and then they will all, if they meet their KPIs, will transform into an AE. And the AEs are charged, it's an acquisition-based role, right? So they're charged with getting the month-to-month deal in the door. Once the credit card is on file and they've agreed to pay, and the basic data and information is there, they transfer the call over to an account manager. Okay. The account manager verifies all the information on the file, will inform the client about the annual or semi-annual upsells that we have available at any given time, and then continue to kind of keep an eye on their account. And then our client success division kind of takes the ball from there and really, works with the client to make sure that they're adopting the software, that everything's according to plan, and also it helps to identify clients that are starting to consider other services that we have in that we're offering at the time, or just upgrading to an annual service.
I keep sort of doubling down on these like from the ground up questions, because it's very cool, and like not everybody has the opportunity to speak to somebody who was part of a high growth startup success story, from the very beginning. So I'm going to keep asking these questions because I think it's very cool. I just understand like your thought process as you sort of built out this team, because you've seen success. That's why, really. So when you've mapped out these KPIs, you have KPIs developed for all these different departments. how have you mapped out the KPIs so that you see success across all your organization? And you've had the opportunity to do it from the ground up. So maybe speak to sort of how you've developed those.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it was seeing what was feasible and practical. Out of the gate, remember when we first started at the back house, it was very experimental, right? And kind of learning, what the KPIs could even be. So what we saw was we kind of just did an average weighted from like our strongest reps that we've had over time to our weakest reps, that I don't want to say weakest, but maybe most untrained or less evolved sales reps that could still cut it, right? That were still making money for the company in some way, but may have not been like the strongest people at the time. And then we made it somewhere right in the middle there, right? So with seasonality, like for instance, like this month, we adopted and kind of changed the KPIs just a little bit to adapt to the seasonality of it, because a lot of agents are kind of in that mindset of let's wait until January, of course. And, obviously we have strategies to try to overcome that, get them to see the value of marketing when other agents are taking their foot off the gas and what have you. But, seasonality is seasonality to some extent, right? So we try to keep it flexible and make sure that it's something that's attainable, right? That is something that is realistic for them to hit, but also not something that's, easy and that's not going to be challenging, and that they're not going to have to really show up every day and give their best effort to reach as well too.
And outside of that, like you're speaking about, like holding them to success metrics. Can you speak a little bit about like the coaching and the strategy around coaching them and guiding them towards success? So like let's actually break it down.
Sure.
I'm having a lot of fun with this because you're early stage again. So let's start off. So what does your onboarding look like for your reps? And then I want to go into, after that, what does your ongoing coaching success strategy look like?
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm really, really big on getting people active and engaged in the role that they're going to have to perform as early as possible. And then after we have something tangible to talk about, meaning experience within the role and seeing where the struggles and hurdles that each person's going to have to overcome, then going back and training again in context. And I'll kind of get a little bit more granular on that. So when we come in, the first thing that we do is get a very high level overview of the Rpb framework. So the basic resources, like, hi, I'm Kyle. I'll be VP of Sales. I'll be working with you as part of your training. Here's Joel, who's another great guy that we have that's going to be doing the training manager. Here's A.L. Cohen. He's our VP of Client Success, and kind of telling them how they can use the resources, human resources, that will be involved. So we start with the humans, right? And then we also eventually, when we get context around the role, get into the technologies in play. The dialer, the CRM system, any email templates that we're going to be using, sales assets, what have you, right? And scripting as well will come in there as well. So as far as the processes, when they come in, since they're starting as an SDR, we focus exclusively on the process of outbound and booking that free trial demo, which is their sole role for like the first. It was 2 weeks. Now we're going to extend that to a month. So their sole role for a month. So we get into that process after. There's a few things before that. Terminology. So we cover like basic terminology,
industry knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very high level, very super basic, and then again we sophisticate that as their understanding of the role continues to evolve. Right. So terminology, key messaging points. We want to make sure that there's alignment from the very front end of our funnel all the way down through clients and like remarketing, and that each client is hearing kind of the same message about what it is that we do and the product, and how it's going to help us solve their business goals, right? So terminology, key messaging points. Then we start diving in on the script, right? So we do a read through on the script. We talk about the psychology of why the script is structured in the way that it is. I
like that a lot, man. I like that. That's really good, because like how many times have you seen sales reps, like they're just told to do something, they have no idea why. Go say this, go sell this, or, position it a certain way. And it's somebody in another department, another city, whatever, who's crafted this messaging. They have no clue. So that's really cool that you do that. And I think it's important.
Yeah, I think it's really big, especially for real estate agents, that we step into their shoes of because they get a lot of calls, right? They get a lot of calls. So we have to be able to empathize with what they're thinking when they get that next call and what makes us different and how we're actually going to not just be different in the sense of trying to sell them, but be different in the sense of the value that we're going to provide them, right? And making sure that that's conveyed consistently in every time. And of course, it's not going to happen with new hires all the time within their first month, but we want to at least set that expectation and talk about why the script is structured in the way that it is and what the client is thinking simultaneously. Because if we've done enough of these calls, we should have a good understanding at each point, each check mark along that line of what the client is going to be thinking at this point. So we cover that. And then we have them do, dry read throughs. Then we do some role play. And then after we've gotten just to the point where, about 2 hours into that role play process, I jump on the phone and I do a couple in front of the whole group as an icebreaker. So I'll jump on the call. The whole training class will be sitting there listening. I'll do about 10 calls. 1 out of every 10 should convert into a free trial. So some training classes, I'll get like 2 or 3 back to back. Others, they'll get to see me sweat a little bit. Get like eight or 9 hangups or something like that back to back, and then I'll get one. And
yeah, but you know what? It doesn't. I would even argue that it doesn't even matter if you get one because it shows that you're doing it.
Absolutely.
And like, how many leaders don't do it? So
exactly. And I actually prefer when they see a little bit of when there is like 9 hangups in a row and I get it on the 10th one, because that's the reality of the role, right? And I tell them right after, it's like, it doesn't matter how good you get at this. 9 out of 10 people, if you look at it over a huge data set, like, tens of thousands of calls, 9 out of 10 people are not going to be interested in what you have to offer. And that's okay. We're not here to convert people that are not interested and do not want to hear what we have to offer and don't want it or need it into doing what we have, into signing up for our product or even for a free trial, right? We're here to make sure that one person that is looking for some help on social media, that does see the value of saving time and educating buyers and sellers without them doing much, and to explain in a simple enough manner to that person how we can help their business. And so when they see that and they see that I'm not immune to rejection or getting hung up on, but that it's not going to change my demeanor and it's not going to change my outlook, I'm not going to start, sweating or getting too nervous about it.
No, you're getting me fired up. I hate cold calling, but now I'm excited to go.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I even did some today. I jumped on the phone today just because there's a slim crew in the office, and every once in a while, I just like to jump on and do it just to show people that, like, it's part of the job, so it's part of the environment. I want to make sure I'm not ever getting too preachy about what we need to do, but I've learned to do that less often now, just so I can focus on some of the more macro things that will help the organization succeed too. So.
That's really strong. No, that's good. I'm going to circle back to cold calling after, but what I want to do, because we're kind of in this sort of stream of thought. So that's your onboarding. That's great. So continued success. What's your coaching cadence look like to keep these people, productive and exceeding and growing, obviously?
Yeah. So, once they get on the phones, which is day one, we're, the whole first week, we're kind of continuing on that path of getting them on the phones as much as possible and then analyzing what they're struggling with and then trying to help them in an individualized way with that. And then adding on product knowledge and, and everything that comes in accordance with that, objection handling, things like that too. So after somebody gets the basics down, they're booking, free trials like nobody's business. They're doing live transfers to our AEs. They're explaining the product well when people throw them objections. From that point on, then we're coaching them and start to give them context around the demo, right? And way more hands-on as far as role play and training. And we're now starting to kind of pair our SDRs with our AEs so they can kind of have a mentor that's been here for a little bit longer and kind of get them up to speed, so to say, a little bit faster, right? Since it used to be a lot quicker transition from SDR to AE, so now we're elongating that. Anyway, I digress. But after they get into the AE role and they're cooking on that and they're starting to get their first couple deals in, and that knowledge starts to crystallize and they're really starting to come into their own. Then from there on out, of course, there's always, company specific things that we need to train on, such as, objection handling and strategy and, prospecting and all that good stuff. But I consider my job more to keep people present and aware of what they are really trying to accomplish on this earth. If we just have people that are showing up to meet a KPI or to meet a quota, it becomes very challenging because even our AEs are still at this phase dealing with a lot of rejection and those type of things. So they have to be here for a bigger purpose. And that purpose can be to grow this company into $1 billion company and rise through the ranks and become a leader themselves, or move into the account management division and make even more money. Or it could be to, absolutely dominate at this role and then try to launch their own business. Doesn't matter to us. It just matters that they have some type of passion, that they have something that exceeds their current role that they are working and striving towards. Because from my experience, that's, the number one thing that keeps me focused and motivated every day to give it my best, regardless of how the situation, is on any given day or time. So the ways that we go about doing that, I'm big on just reminding people to focus on action over results, write your results down and consider them done. We're headed into December, write down how many deals that you're going to hit, put it in a statement as if it's already happened, read it, in the morning or before you go to bed. Right. And then from that point on out, other than those windows before you go to bed, when you're going to bed or when you're writing out your goals, then you've got to be obsessively focused on action and obsessively focused on how can I right now make the most meaningful impact towards my goal, and then trusting that the results will come.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. And I appreciate that, because I know it's hard to keep people engaged at a startup, because, you're not in the Bay Area, but I'm sure there's just another one around the corner. So what's a differentiator? It's usually not the pay anymore. It's usually the value they get out of the leadership or the company supporting them in whatever their endeavors are. So good on you for that and recognizing that, because I think that'll keep a lot of really good people around.
Yeah, we're hoping so. And a lot of them are, and what's really cool is a lot of the team now is starting, this I can tell we're making a little bit of progress here, because our team is coming up with great ideas every day that are strengthening our culture. And I consider my job to, when those ideas come to the surface and it seems to have other people are like, that's a really good idea. And I think it's a good idea. And other leaders think that it's a good idea. Then getting those things into action as quickly as possible. So, through whatever channels I have to, make that happen. If it's one that I can, do myself, then amazing. I'll get that done. If it's one that I need to speak with other leaders or, David or Ben about to make happen, then I consider it my job to get that done. So it's good to not be the only one that comes up with the ideas. And I just try to facilitate that process in between. And our team's great at helping kind of mold the culture as we go too.
No, that's good. Okay, I have a question for you, because you mentioned a lot of role playing that you do when you're sort of training and onboarding reps. So role playing is obviously something that I think is a great tool. I think it's super effective if done properly, but everyone hates it. So how do you bridge that gap? How do you do it effectively? What's worked for you?
Yeah. So one thing I think that's really cool that we do pretty often, but we can always do more of, is doing it in a group setting. Right. I think first thing in the morning is really the ideal, since we've started doing, and we got this idea from an SDR at Outreach when they posted some LinkedIn video, but we got a Buddha, a stuffed Buddha, and we pass around and we kind of do in a Scrum style meeting in the morning, talking about how our day went yesterday, what our goals are today, and what hurdles we have in the way, and we pass it around. But occasionally what we'll do is append that with some role play. So I'll just throw out, hey, John, I'm not interested. It's the first call that you just made to me. You're trying to pitch me on a free trial. I'm not interested. And then we'll see how he handles that. Right. Or, I'll go out. Hey, Bill, I'm trying to use names of just, Bill, your product sounds great, but I'm not buying anything until February. Give me a call back then, right? And just go around the room and see how people are doing that. So I think it helps to be an icebreaker when they're doing that in front of all their peers right in that moment. And then when you're on the phone, you're already kind of warmed up, right? breaking the ice on the first couple calls when you have less of a chance of getting any feedback on that. So that's number one, but also too, something that I'm really, really focused on this month and last month as well is one-on-one meetings. I think that doing one-on-ones with our AEs and SDRs for that matter is going to be critical just because different people have different struggles. Like for some people, it's more of a tonality based thing. They've memorized all the information, and they can even deliver the script right. But the way that they're engaging the prospect is maybe needs some work, right? Or other people, maybe they're extremely talented on the phones, but they're lacking product knowledge. Or with others, maybe they're saying everything and doing everything right, but they're failing to transition. Like they're making a statement of value and then waiting for the prospect to say, you know what, I love it, let's do it, instead of actually taking them to that next step. So we try to document what each person needs help with, or ask them, what they need help with, and then work on that and within the context of a sale during a one-on-one. And also, just that's a good time for just other check-ins that we do as well.
And how do you actually, because you said sometimes you'll ask them for their feedback, and if you have a self-aware rep, then they'll be able to provide that. And obviously that's what you want to hire at the end of the day, but not everybody can be so self-aware. So how do you do you use like Gong, or what do you use?
I want to.
It sounds like it'd be good for
here's two. We are going to do Gong. Had a couple reps reach out. I'm connected with a lot of them on LinkedIn, but I think eventually we are going to adopt that software. But I listen into calls still. And I have, a couple of Anthony DeRosa, who's our sales operations guy. He's usually buried in a spreadsheet or putting together a report or helping us better understand the data. But he'll occasionally listen in, and Joel will listen in, and Eyal will listen in. But I'll still listen in myself as well. And I can usually hear within the context of a few calls what they're struggling with. So if it's an SDR, I can listen to 3 or 4 calls of how they're introing the call. If they're getting a successful result, if they're strengthening the appointment with questions to specify or to identify, I should say, the value that the prospect really wants from the service. If it's an AE that's on a call and they've been on it for 25 minutes, I know that they're close to getting into the pitch if they already haven't got there, right?
Yeah.
So then I'll start tuning in, and I'll kind of hear where they're at with things, and then either give them immediate feedback after the call, if it's a good time for that, or I'll document it down on paper if it's more suited for a one-on-one, and then kind of bring that up during the one-on-one and kind of get their feedback as to why they were using that approach, or if there was a strategy, maybe something that I missed in the conversation as to why they were going about it in that way.
Yeah.
At least I'm on my A game.
Yeah.
Or I'll just tell them like, hey, here's what I saw. What's your perspective on this? And then here's what I would suggest that may work a little bit better in the next time that you're in that situation.
No, it's cool. And I'm going to ask you one more. I'm going to ask you, I hope you have more water. I apologize. You brought so many. Oh, it's coffee. Okay, cool. That's not helping at all then.
No, I'm good. I have a lot of time today. No biggie.
No, you brought some really cool points. And I really, I've gone through onboarding, coaching, role playing. The last thing that I'd like to speak to you about, because you're an expert at it and it's your own fault for bringing so many cool ideas to the table. So blame yourself that we're going into this, but cold calling, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people who are VP are actively involved in. Obviously it depends on the company. I don't want to generalize, but I would say that many people who are VP sales would rather not do it if they don't have to. But you're doing it. You're doing it today. You did it. You do it for all your training. So what are some of the best practices for being effective at cold calling?
Well, I think mindset is number one. Like of course, there's a lot of industry specific or sales specific things that go into it, but your mindset has to be right. I think a lot of times we get too trapped in the result of things instead of the action of things. So for me, I have to make sure that every once in a while I'm going to do some type of yoga or meditation so that I can get out of my own way mentally and be able to elongate that period of focus and determination and kind of be able to, dedicate the right amount of energy to every single call and be okay if they hang up on me, right? Mm-hmm. That's number one, right? So I like to start off the call in a very familiar tone, like we've spoke before. it's not to be misleading, but I think it's just the best way to get prospects engaged. So I'd be like, hey, Scott. Hey, Scott, it's Kyle with Zentap. How are you? And then, I think the right feeling that we're trying to induce in that moment is, have I spoke to this person before?
Yeah, because you stop and you question. You're like, oh, did I miss something? Did I miss a call? Like what?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, but without saying it, and so that will usually buy a second or two.
Yeah.
Then the second thing that I try to do is active. This is what I mean by like being super engaged into every call, because I think the tendency is to kind of sit back, go through the same repetitive script, and wait for someone to give you the time of day versus like what we're doing is trying to pull up something specific to that prospect that we can connect to in the first 10 to 15 seconds of the call to give them a very personalized experience. So my idea would be right after that. They're like usually saying something like, I'm sorry, it's Kyle with who? It's Kyle with Zentap. I just saw this beautiful listing that you have on 123 Main Street. Is that still on the market? And that gets them engaged early, and they're still trying to figure out.
You're going to buy a house.
Yeah, and they say yes, perfect. Look, I love to create a video for that listing, right? And then talk with you about a strategy, how we can drive that video out to buyers and investors within the area, and to kind of help you get set up. We'll create the video for free and kind of do a free consultation with you during a 2-week free trial. If you like what we do, we have affordable month-to-month options. If not, you get to keep everything that we did. Does that sound fair? And if they say
that's a strong pitch. I can feel it. Yeah.
Right. And then from there, then I'm assuming if they say yes, it does sound fair, then we're going right into, look, I'd love to send you an email with everything, so you can see it in writing. What's the best email? And then after we get the email, we'll ask, hey, are you in front of a computer? And if they answer yes, then boom, it should be a live transfer to an AE. If they answer no, then, hey, when's going to be a good time later on today or tomorrow when you have about 10 to 15 minutes in front of a computer? Then we'll schedule that time. And then before the end of the call, at the end of the call, what we want to do is strengthen the appointment, because it's very easy for someone who's not really interested to BS you for 2 minutes on, yeah, sure, yeah, Kyle is Zentap.com, sure, 10 tomorrow sounds great. All right, cool. Bye. So we want to ask them, what's the number one goal that you're trying to achieve in 2020, or other than creating this video for your listing and talking with you about a strategy to get that in front of thousands of buyers and investors. What is something else that we could do to drive meaningful value for your business during that 2-week free trial? And we'll get that. And if they, elaborate on what they're really looking for, we may speak a little bit to that or ask a spinoff question off of that to get a better idea of what we can do in between the time that the call ends and the time that they have that scheduled call with an AE. Mm-hmm. So ideally, in the most perfect sense, we're actually creating value prior to that call and sending it to them via email so that they can see something that's valuable before we even speak. So they're further incentivized to pick up the phone. Then when they pick up the phone, we're ideally showcasing or creating that video on that call, and then explaining to them the difference between the free trial and what we can do for them if they choose to take advantage of one of our paid services.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for walking us through that. That's good, because like I said, I don't think a lot of people know best practice for cold calling. And I like your approach a lot. It's it's good. It's personal. I think that's the most important, and it's tied to everything you said. I was going to talk about technology because you haven't mentioned any technology. Everything you're doing, so you're creating a personal touch point. You've done your little bit of research. It's so funny because there's all these technologies now that do that. Like, you have Outreach that does a whole bunch of research on the person before you actually engage with them. And then there's I'm sure there's some type of tech that can reinforce the value prop. And like right before like the appointment, I think what was I looking at? I think it was Vidyard. That sent like a video to sort of reinforce like the morning of the appointment, like the value that you're bringing to, like, there's all these different ways that you can do, but you're just doing it in a couple sentences, like so simple, but there's all these like elaborate, expensive technologies built that to support like something that comes so inherently and natively to you. So it's impressive, like very good.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. And we might even end up using some of those technologies to make it a little bit easier, but it's fun though. I mean, honestly, it's kind of core to our sales culture because that's how we started. But we are looking and kind of looking to streamline tech in a technological way to kind of help that process be less intensive as well, or supplement it with some stuff too. So I think it's a kind of a mixture of both, but we've got a good system in that though too.
No, you got a really good system. I can appreciate the fact that at least, even if not everybody you hire can do it with the same, I don't know, energy that you can, because it's always hard to replicate, right? When you hire somebody and hope they bring the same to the table, but at least you've mapped it out. And I just thought it was funny that as I'm listening to how you do your cold outreach, there's so many technologies that do everything that you do just naturally and inherently. It's just it's interesting.
That's a good point. I never really thought about it like that, but it's definitely true though.
Yeah, I think that the fact that you know that and you're aware of how to do this without the use of any tech is why you've been so successful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just because of you've figured out what's worked best or whatnot, but I think the art of cold calling isn't what it used to be.
No, it's not. It's kind of changed, and I don't even know. I mean, I'm still really young in my sales career and got a lot to learn, and I think being able to make things more efficient is one of them, and learn and master other processes that will add on to that repertoire is kind of the mode that I'm in right now. But it means a lot coming from you. So thank you.
No, I think that you've done it right, because I think that myself included, we become too dependent on technology and forget that all technology was built out of process that was just successful in the first place. But once you become too dependent on technology, then you lose those skill sets. So, like you've out of necessity, just because of building the business from the ground up, like you've been cold calling, you've been building out like your pitch, you found out what's worked best. Well, if a sales rep, a young sales rep, goes into an organization and they're using all these different tools and all these different technologies, if they ever, they're not going to be able to have a skill set that they can take away and grow in their career. Now, imagine if they're in your position and they're doing a startup and they want to grow a sales team and they don't have the capital to invest in, thousands, hundred thousands of dollars of technology, then they won't know how to do it to the same effectiveness that you will. That's all I'm saying. Yeah,
that's a good point, man. That's a good point. It's something that I think there's a balance to as well too, which is, I think this is one thing. If I had to say my goal for 2020, it's always to learn more, right? I definitely don't have it all figured out, and I think that the more that I learn, the more that I'll be able to spread that knowledge and identify, good ways to leverage some of these technologies that you're speaking to and kind of create the best of both worlds, which I think is where we're headed with our sales organization, is to kind of add in some streamlined technology to integrate with the current processes that we have and leverage each accordingly to be able to, find more of our ideal prospects in real time and to help people in 2020. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, I've bugged you enough about how your business works and all the processes and whatnot. Let's slowly start to close this up because I want to go back into a couple like questions that I like to ask, just sort of like bring out like a little bit more about your mindset and your experience and your journey. So first one I like to ask, I didn't ask this on the little PDF I sent, so I apologize, but you'll be cool answering it. I can tell already. If you were, say we're like friends in high school, like when you're like, 14, 15 years old, like, are you the same person or are you very different now? Like, what were you
very
like?
Different.
Yeah.
Almost like two different people. Not in the sense of like, I like to say that I've had a good heart the whole way and maybe have the best intentions, but without as good of a skill set. But I struggled a lot, through high school and young adulthood up through like 25, 26, 27, with not knowing the right way to be my best self. And I think, part of it was, maybe some mental health things that I had to get past and turning to, alcohol and partying and stuff like that would replace the more effective means that I know how to deal with stuff now, which is meditation and yoga and really kind of making sure that I can stay one with the present moment instead of, getting, anxiety, thinking about the future or being depressed, thinking about the past. Like those are skills that I just never really heard of growing up, or maybe I did hear of them and I didn't give them the proper attention because it wasn't culturally as common as it is now.
Yeah.
But I wasn't the same. I was into sports. I liked music. Like I was really into hip hop and all of that. And I still love hip hop every once in a while. But these days I'm more focus on spending my time learning.
Yeah.
And, I'm more likely to read a book and to go meditate and do yoga than ever, like I don't go to bars or anything like that anymore. So I think it was just a natural process of growing up, but I almost like to think of like my old self is no longer existent. And to some extent, I try to live my life in a way to where the person that I was yesterday is still non-existent. Mm-hmm. I think like the idea of daily rebirth is crucial because if we're constrained to, self-identifying ourselves in any one particular way, then we can limit our growth. So I think, Joe Dispenza has been a really good influence. Not only met the guy before, but just watching his book of like watching videos and I bought an online course, but detaching from our idea of who we are and what we're supposed to do on a daily basis and remaining open to the possibilities and like the things that we believe that we're going to accomplish, really take the time to envision that, feel that, like create those emotions and then act as if they're already true. And that is things that I'm working on trying to master on a day-to-day basis so that I can continue to evolve and leave old, outdated thought patterns and ways of dealing with the outside world behind and continue to evolve and be a better person as each day goes.
Very good. And then I guess this would be a follow-up question. If you were going to tell your 20-year-old self or pick when you were younger, one thing, it could be professional, it could be personal, what would that one thing be?
Focus on your breath. I would say there's so much to do in this world, and I think we're only going to get more swarmed with information and tasks and options and different things that any one person could do. But if we get to the point where we forget that we're breathing and we're not conscious of our inhale and our exhale and centering ourselves in any one moment at a time, then everything can get lost. I lived my entire life thinking about the past or the future when I was 25 years old, even in a lot more before that as well. So I would tell myself, focus on my breath or go to a Kundalini yoga studio. That changed my life. Read The Power of Now. Yeah. Those are all the main things that changed my life. So I would say one of those three probably.
And those are all, those are really important points. And I think that you mentioned and you sort of alluded to just like being present all the time in an environment that is constantly inundated with things that distract us. Wow, from in a work environment, thinking about milestones we have to hit, revenue goals, whatever our next objective is, to sitting at dinner with family, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, it doesn't matter. And you're on your phone, like on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, whatever. So I think that's, I'm also, I'm a huge, I also am not always in the present moment. So I'm a huge offender of not being present all the time, and for sure I worry about.
Me too, for what it's worth. Like
so how do you do that? Like how do you mentioned? Okay, so you have some like centering activities. Focus on like the now, like breathing, like the inhale, exhale. Outhale. And I think that's more of that's a very like yoga type. Is there anything else that you do that sort of eliminates all the noise around you that allows you to be more effective?
I think it can be I think in the most basic direct like way of correlation, Kundalini yoga is whenever I have like some type of blockage on like clarity of what my next direction or what I should be focusing on or how to get past something I'm struggling with, I would go to a Kundalini yoga session. Hot yoga is a great, that's very challenging. Like the 90-minute ones are really, really challenging. So you kind of force yourself to get over yourself mentally and force through adversity physically and mentally, which is great. But these days I try, because time is more of the essence, and I want to, at this phase of my life, dedicate as much as I can towards productivity in the workplace so that I can maximize income and later on use that income to affect the world. I try to focus that energy, the same type of focus that I would focus in a yoga practice or something, on the tasks that I'm doing at the time. So like while I'm talking to you right now, I try my best to only think about the question that you're asking me or pay attention to what you're saying or pay attention to what I'm saying and tune out the environment. Yeah. And all of our minds obviously are always going to jump to the past or the future. And one thing that I got from The Power of Now is like the second that we realize that we're thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future, at that very moment, we're present, right? So that is something that I'm like, okay, it's not a judging thing on myself, but it is like when I realize that, let's double down on the energy on what I'm doing now so that if I dedicate as much energy into any one given task or situation or event, then the reciprocal will become true as well too. It'll bounce back in accordance.
Very good. Awesome. And then last question, any sort of mentors or resources that you go to learn. So it could be, you mentioned actually a couple, but it could be a person, it could be places where you go to learn, it could be audibles, podcasts, books. Like what's your go-to?
So I got a couple answers on that.
Okay, cool.
My dad is great. He's a huge inspiration to me. My dad is always somebody I can get some real feedback from and knows me really well, kind of has seen me through all stages of my life and believed in me the whole way. So he's one. My wife, Stephanie, is incredible. She will keep it real with me all the time. And we work, she works just as hard. So I know that if she sees me in all these different situations, so she knows when I'm on my A game and when I'm off it. So as far as people I know, those are a couple people, my mom and there's so many people that are great, but I mean, those two people are really impactful to me, at least in the sense of where I'm at right now. And my family, there's my brother. I could go on for days on like people that I know, my mom, dad, whatever. But as far as outside of the context of people that I know, Eckhart Tolle, which I believe is how you pronounce his name, he changed my life with The Power of Now. I've read that book like 10 times. I've never met the guy, but I can't thank him enough because that book really changed my entire existence. My dad sent me that book, so that really was the best gift that I've ever had. And Joe Dispenza is somebody that I think is just on another level as far as being able to manifest like what you want from the world, but giving you actual scientific ways to go about doing it. Mm-hmm. I think he's tremendously powerful. I'd love to meet that guy one day. But yeah, those are a few that I could name off the top of my head. There's so many different people. But I also, these days, I'm trying to learn something from everybody. Like anybody that I meet, whether it's a sales rep, yourself, anybody that I come in contact with, I try to remain open to the unique thing that I can get from that person, that they are, something that they can always, educate me about and remain as open as possible to new ideas and different perspectives on.
Oh, that's why, I do this podcast, and I love it because every conversation, like sometimes I'll catch myself forgetting that I'm doing a podcast and I'll be listening to whatever the person's talking about and I'll be like, oh shit, that's a really cool idea. like that, like I'll be learning, you learn right. Whenever you talk to anybody, you'll learn something. So like I've learned tons from you, like, and when I talk to anybody, it could be, I've spoken to people that are junior in their career and their perspective on things is just totally like life changing just because they see it through a different lens. And it's like totally like, wow, like, and that's something that all that stuff you just build into your personal persona, your professional. And if you can do that and be aware that you nailed it, like as long as you're always open to learning, I think that's
100%, 100%. And that's like, I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, it's really smart of you to do these podcasts for that. Cause I could just imagine, I've seen you've interviewed some really intelligent people. So, and you're intelligent yourself. So
thanks, man. I try.
I don't have an MBA, so I got some things to learn from you, brother. So
yeah, well, it's not, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people that don't have the credentials on paper that are, 10 times what I am right now, and I can only aspire to be. So I really do believe that it's what you do and not just, of course, there's the old school of thought where you have to have the title and the credentials to get your foot in the door. But once your foot's in the door, it's really what you actually accomplish, right? So
I think that's generally speaking true, but you've asked some really good questions and good insight. So thank you, man. No, my pleasure. Okay. So how do people reach out to you, connect with you? LinkedIn, email, what do you prefer? LinkedIn is like the only social media platform that I'm like really on ever myself. So Kyle James on LinkedIn, and then Kyle at Zentap.com. If you have anything you want to reach out, potential collaborations, or you see some opportunities that you want to collaborate with Zentap on, let me know. Happy to help.
Cool, cool. And is there anything that I didn't bring up that you wanted to speak about?
No, I mean, honestly, I'd say, one question I have for you, man, what's some advice that you think that I can take with me today to go out and make myself a little bit better and help make our organization better? Well, if you were,
Yeah.
with the questions that you've asked me, what's one thing that maybe I could put on my radar or take with me to run with?
So I think the number one thing that you can do, and I don't know all the inner workings of your organization, what you've done so far, is you're an incredibly impressive individual in terms of the skills that you bring to the table and the product knowledge and like literally your joie de vivre, like your excitement and your enthusiasm for the work you do. I think that the hardest thing to do would be to hire somebody that has that in them. So I think that what you should do is and I kind of alluded to this in the questions. We spoke about technologies that emulate what you do. I think that now that you know what works, I think that you build out a playbook that incorporates things that can subsidize your knowledge and is truly replicable and scalable. Because everything you're doing is right, but really once you get past that, I don't know what your revenue numbers are right now. But I think that if you continue to grow at the rate that you're growing, you're eventually going to, if you don't future-proof yourself, you're going to hit walls. So when I try and build out a playbook for an organization, it literally hits every single point from the very first conversation, the psychology behind the messaging, that whole process of the points that you hit with your client and the tonality that you do it with. So everything is just now codified. So I don't know if you have this all in writing and it's something that somebody can literally go through and read through on day one, week one, whichever. But that's something that I would definitely suggest. And then obviously you want to use, and it can be like a 100-page document. That's cool. But you want it as like a reference book because you're going to put all this energy and effort into hiring them day one. And you're going to have these reps that are, and you're still young. So you're probably not seeing that yet. But the lessons they learn in the first month, they're not going to remember in, after year 1, year 2, year 5. So you have to find a way to either map out an ongoing, not onboarding, but just like a touch point, a refresher of all the things that you spoke about. But you have to be mindful of your own time too. So that's why when you can get your entire brain, like literally every single part of the business, right until like closed one deal and then customer success after the fact, who maintains the account. Obviously, you want to reduce churn and you want to mitigate that on the back end as well. But literally every single point, and I can actually send you one that I've used before in the past. That is literally like it when you first see it, you're like, holy like that's a lot. But I don't believe that it can ever be too much because you never know. First of all, you never know how much how much you actually communicate what somebody absorbs. So to give them a resource that a PDF they can open up in their computer and they're not embarrassed to go back to you and ask questions because you've literally given them everything in something they can refer to anytime. If you combine that with the right hires, which means, you already nailed it, people that are very growth oriented, aware of their own flaws, and they want to improve. You give them the tools they need to improve, and they will take it upon themselves to educate and continuously learn and grow. Because I think that's really it. Like you have to give them that ongoing support, and you just can't do it all the time. And you don't, so some whether or not it's like a learning portal, or it could just be like a document. But you got to take everything in your head and just like get it on paper. And then, like I said, like find technologies to obviously make it a little bit easier so that you could have some great sales reps that may not be so great at doing things without that support. And
right.
You're not going to like personality is probably the hardest thing you're dealing with when it comes to cold calling. So I would find as much as you're good at it without all these tools, I think that if you want to scale the business into $1 billion business, you should find tools that compensate for the shortcomings of more junior, less experienced, less outgoing people, because you have to make it as simple as possible for people to sell, and you have like this backbone, so you know what you're doing. But you have to also be aware that not everyone's you. Very few people are as good as you at this. So
yeah, no, that's a great point, man. And I'm going to take that and run with it for sure. And that's something we definitely cannot get good enough at,
Yeah.
So
I would say that's one thing. I'm trying to think of anything else you mentioned while we're chatting. I don't mind at all. For the onboarding, I think you're pretty stellar. I would say a 1 month ramp is actually very short. Traditionally, I don't know what kind of KPIs are responsible for after 1 month, but I would say 2 months. They should still be getting comfortable in their position, and that could be industry specific. Maybe it's very easy to climatize, but I've never seen a ramp that's less than 3 months with maybe graduated targets. But first month, usually reps will not have a target, like any target at all. They'll be responsible for just like learning through osmosis, and this could be mapping out. You don't want, by the way, just to sort of put a context around that, you don't want your training and your onboarding to be unorganized. So even if it is a month, every second of that month is still
right.
Exactly. But I think that especially as you grow, having your SDRs sit with all the other individuals in your organization, or at least certain people from each department within your organization, it'll create a little bit of a culture that it'll help them adapt to the culture a little bit quicker. It'll help them become more comfortable with their peers. And I also am a big fan of getting sales reps to understand who they're responsible to, and vice versa. So if one of the biggest issues you'll have as you scale is that everyone becomes an email and not a face anymore. So if you can get people at this early stage to really understand who they're accountable to, and you have finance, you have success, you have marketing, and you have them all literally physically know those people that they're going to be supporting, I think that will make your business much stronger while you still can do that effectively. So that's what I would use your first month for. Really, really building out that culture and that integration piece, and just, because there's going to be a point where you unfortunately can't do that effectively, or it's much harder to do it effectively. So I think that while you have the opportunity, don't rush them into sales if you can afford it, and just focus on getting them to know as many people in the organization as possible. And also, I think that also helps a little bit with retention if they feel more part of the family. That's kind of like a airy-fairy fluffy piece to it, but obviously retention is huge too, and you have a couple other things you spoke about that help that. So that's great, man. It's A1 advice, and I appreciate it, man. Yeah, thanks, man.
I followed up with you on that to check in. So
yeah, well, no, this has been a great chat. A lot of value. I would love to do like another one in like, I don't know, a year or something, to see where you guys are going, because you're killing it.
Anytime, man. I really appreciate it. It was a blast.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That's all I got today. So, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle James, VP of Sales at Zentap. Thanks again for listening to another Sales versus Marketing podcast, where we speak with sales, marketing, and business leaders. If you haven't already, please share this podcast with all your friends, family, colleagues, peers. Subscribe to this podcast, and you can obviously subscribe, stream, and download this podcast wherever you can listen to podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave us a rating. Obviously, any rating is okay as long as it's a 5-star rating. And you can also watch this interview on YouTube. As always, I hope you all have a great week. Have a productive week, and we'll speak again soon. Bye now. Welcome to Scott's Thoughts, where we break down some of the most important takeaways in the interview we just heard. So we just sat down with Kyle James, VP of Sales at Zentap. Kyle had a ton of information, and we definitely dived into some great topics, and I hope there was a lot of lessons learned. I know I took a ton of notes here, but two things that I really wanted to speak to was his focus on authentic, genuine cold calling. So I do believe that this is a little bit of a lost art. Kyle mapped out a process for cold calling that obviously was able to bridge a gap, introduce himself to somebody who's never heard of him or his company before, and not only speak through and get their attention, but then book them for free trials of his software. So listen back to that purpose or that point that he made. Really, the takeaway with his process was to be genuine, be authentic in the intro, provide value, and obviously you're going to be doing that by actually tying the conversation that you're having with the customer to items that are actually important to the person you're speaking to. So don't make it a generic pitch. Tie it to something personal and important, and then reinforce the value before you pass them off for an account executive in his case, where they were booking demos. And the reason why you reinforce the value and sort of close a second time on the pitch, because you don't want to lose the customer's interest. You don't want them to write you off, and it's very easy for them to BS. So it's really just being authentic, being genuine, provide value up front, and then he goes as far as to reinforce the value to make sure that they commit to the desired objective, which would be the free trial of his software. So that was a really important point, because I think that there's a lot of softwares and technologies that do this for sales reps. But I think to hear it from somebody at his level who's done it for so long successfully, as something that we should either teach over to our teams, or if we're still cold calling ourselves, we can use this tactic to be a little bit more effective. I think that's one really great takeaway. The second great takeaway that sort of reinforces his team's ability and his ability to do cold calls successfully is his emphasis on role playing. Now, role playing is something that I think people inherently are uncomfortable with, but he's made the effort of sort of breaking the ice with his team when they do role playing in the morning. So just doing a little huddle with his team, incorporating some fun into the role playing, so that the team doesn't feel awkward. They've already started engaging and socializing with each other, and they're all talking and communicating already. So when Kyle bridges that into a role play in a group setting, it seems less like work, and it seems less what's the word I'm looking for? Awkward and obtrusive, and it seems more natural. So I think that role playing is effective if you can get the sales rep who you want to role play with to a point where they're comfortable being themselves, being authentic, because then they can truly practice all their skill sets and not feel like it's so regimented and strict and formalized, which isn't really the case when they would be on the phone anyways. They should be comfortable on the phone. So you want to get them into the same frame of mind that they would be in on the phone when they're role playing in the workplace. And obviously Kyle's strategy to do that is to just break the ice and make the environment fun. So those are two really great points that Kyle spoke about that I haven't really had anyone discuss on this podcast yet. So that's why I really wanted to go into those. There's a lot of other great points. So, listen again. Kyle speaks about a great onboarding process, a great ongoing coaching process. He speaks about retaining talent. So all great stuff, but I don't want to, rehash everything. But I hope you all enjoyed. Kyle was a great interview. I really appreciate that you came on. This has been another Scott's Thoughts. As always, like, share, subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment. And I hope you all have a good week, have a productive week, and we will speak again soon. Bye now.